By those ages using a government-issued ID, for instance. I mean, should Australians be prepared for having their faces scanned to use social media?
Banjo, Patterson.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Tonight we have a guest who needs no introduction, True Blue Aussie Warrior, Nick Patterson. Nick Banjo Patterson, how are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm really good, mate. Happy to be here.
Good to have you on. So we had some big news earlier in the week, at the start of the week. Shane Patton, Chief Commissioner, now former Chief Commissioner, his resignation was announced suddenly, shock resignation, due to a vote of no confidence. I'll get your reaction to that in a moment, but Tom Elliott had an interesting commentary on Shane Patton, and he claimed that Shane Patton was used as a scapegoat. I'll just play that. I'll bring that on, play that, and get your reaction to that as well.
Shane Patton is being made a scapegoat for the government's own policing failures, law and order failures. Now, there's three big ones. The first was the harsh lockdown policing. Remember, anti-lockdown protesters were pepper sprayed. The fact is, it was the state government which passed all the laws saying that, anti-lockdown protests had to be shut down. The police only do what they're told. Two, and this is a big one, the relaxed bail laws. Now, I read about yet another young offender over the weekend who's had bail 50 times in a row now. He breaches it every time, and yet he's still out and about doing what he does. Now, again, that was the government that stuffed up the bail laws. Basically, they changed the law so that breach of bail was no longer an offence. Now, that is not the police's fault, because it is the bail laws which are at fault. And Jacinta Allen has admitted as much on this program 2 weeks ago. She said, we've realised we have some work to do on the bail laws. Well, these are the bail laws that the government stuffed up. And then three, there was the police pay dispute, which dragged on far too long, a year and a half. And now there's talk that the deal that's allegedly been done will soon be undone. It was not Shane Patton's fault. He is not given a giant bucket of money by the government and said, just go and pay your members as much as you want or they want. The blame is being laid at Shane Patton's doorstep. It is not his fault. It is the government's own failing. Shane Patton, or now ex-commissioner of Victoria Police, Shane Patton, is a scapegoat.
So, Nick, you've copped the brunt, I'd say it's fair to say, of the draconian policies in Victoria of Daniel Andrews and Victoria Police. You're in court with them. The case dragged on for 18 months or longer. First of all, my question's in two parts. What's your reaction to Shane Patton resigning? And second question is, what's your reaction to Tom Elliott's commentary about him being used as a scapegoat?
Well, yeah, first of all, Shane Patton, he was the one who wasn't behind all of the policing that was like the draconian policing, the pepper spraying, all the rest of it. But he was like, people say he wasn't. And actually, this ties in with what Tim Elliott said, right? So he said that the police just do what they're told. They're not meant to just do what they're told. That's garbage. That is not the way the Victoria Police Act is meant to function. It's very
That's called the Nuremberg excuse.
Well, it's not just that either. It goes beyond that, because the legislation, and I actually provided all of this material to the police at police headquarters to inform them that they have an obligation to enforce the law and the law only. I showed them the case law that's set the precedent in this country, which is R versus Commissioner of the Police Metropolis, ex parte. It's a 1968 case. It's a case in which the judiciary were trying to direct the police in the performance of their duties, and it was determined that they cannot. Because of the separation of powers, police hold they're independent office holders. So their obligation is to enforce the law and the law only. What happens is when the police become, I guess, compliant with mandates, like we experience, and with directions. Okay, we call them. I think they'll call it directions. When they just comply with whatever direction and enforce any direction that the government, decides to make as policy, what happens is that's called acting under dictation. That's the legitimate term for that, and that's how you get a dictatorship. Now, police have an obligation, and they know this, or they should know this, because I was able to find this material very easily. I looked up the Victoria Police Act, which says in Section 51 that all police who have subscribed the oath or made the affirmation under Section 50 have the duties and powers of a constable at common law. Now, you know how in the Acts, it has a definition for things, and then you've got to use the definitions in the Act to determine what the Act is referring to. There's no definition for constable at common law, so you have to go to the Australian Legal Dictionary. So I went to the LexisNexis Legal Dictionary, which is the most commonly used one that we use in the courts here, and it said that a constable has independent authority over his or her office, and that a constable cannot be directed by the government or senior police as to he or she should prosecute. A constable's duty is to enforce the law and the law only. And then underneath this definition, it has all these acts from federal acts, state acts, and case law from Australian cases and legislation to verify the legitimacy of the definition. So that's the definition of a police constable, which all police are. It doesn't matter if you're a sergeant, senior sergeant, doesn't matter. You are, if you've made the oath, you have the duties and powers of a constable at common law, which is clearly defined in the dictionary, the legal dictionary, and it has case law in which there was a case, and I mentioned the case before, R versus Commission. It was a UK case. And many of the UK cases will set precedent over here, and vice versa.
That's right.
So this particular case was actually used in the district court in Western Australia, and that's how it set a precedent in this country, where the judiciary were trying to direct the police to perform certain functions, but basically the ruling was such that the actual police officer had no obligation, was found to have no obligation to perform any duty for anyone, even the judiciary, other than to provide a report.
Wow.
Now, what we had was police running around with tear gas, pepper spraying people, tactical police bashing people. I mean, I copped the brunt of it. So Mr. Elliott's full of crap. and I think there's a bit of propaganda there to protect this guy, who actually he would have known full well that he's just working for the government. But the problem is, the police commissioner is appointed by who? You know who appoints the police commissioner?
Who appoints him?
The executive government.
Oh, so there's already a conflict.
There's already a conflict of interest, right? So that's the big issue there. So he's not the scapegoat. He wasn't doing his job. His job is to enforce the law and to make sure the police enforce the law. Instead, he decided to enforce the policies that were unlawful anyway, and we've proven that. There's been various cases that have proven that they were unlawful, and he was enforcing them for his buddies in the executive government who gave him his job. So that's the reality of what's going on there. And then when he went on about the bail laws, now this is rubbish as well, because the bail laws, there's this one guy he used this one case where he's been bailed 50 times. He's still doing what he's doing. Well, I was bailed for doing nothing wrong. I was denied bail, actually. I was kept in jail for a month, as you know. And then when they did bail me, they bailed me with a full gag order and a $50,000 surety. Right. So the idea that there's something wrong with the bail laws is not. What they do is they get them to put up a surety. And if you can't put up a surety, they won't give you bail. So that's inaccurate what he's saying there as well. That they don't let someone out 50 times when they keep committing the same offences. They won't. That you'll be remanded in custody. That's the reality of it. And if you're not remanded in custody, well, then you've got to, begs the question, who does that guy know? Who's looking after that guy? Whose son is he? Because because he keeps getting out, other people are not getting out. They slip up once when they're on bail, and that's it. And I know of people and I spoke to people who were in jail when they found out that I was getting bailed on the last day in jail. They didn't believe my story, so they wanted to look at the brief of evidence, and I showed them, and then they were shocked, because they said, how come you're getting a $50,000 surety? I said, which is basically a bond. You've got to put up $50,000 to get out of jail, right? And I said, because it's a political case. You get treated differently when you're a political dissident. Other people, so anyway, some of these guys were telling me about people who had, large sureties that were put up by their family, and they ended up losing that. So that's a big money maker for the government. And
it certainly is.
Yeah, I mean, imagine someone gets out and they're a drug offender, and then family says, all right, we'll get you bail, and it'll be $100,000 bail. Then they go out and they get done for some drug offense again, and then the family has to sell their house, and they, the government's getting $100,000, $50,000.
Easy money for the government.
Yeah. They want. I'm absolutely convinced the government wants the people in this state and in this country to be drug affected, to have problems with their families, so they can get access to children, access to the access to basically your livelihood, or the fruits of your labors, because they can easy to control the people that are weak, and when they're committing offences. I mean, think about it this way: you've got drugs are running rampant, especially in the inner city areas, then outer suburb areas.
Or the injecting rooms near schools.
Yep, and they're promoting it. And then you've got the in the country areas, right? And you've got all these drugs everywhere, and the police can't deal with it. We don't know how to get rid of the drugs and stop the drugs. It's a joke. You could stop the drugs if you wanted to. Think of all the resources they have. Look at how much resources they put into the COVID mandates, right? Imagine if they used half of that effort and resources to get rid of the drugs.
Spot on.
But they don't. They don't, because they
always argue they don't have enough resources, but COVID proved them wrong. It disproved them. It proved that they were lying. They were intentionally lying the whole time. They claimed that they had a lack of resources to control the Sudanese gangs.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue. I think is you've got all these people in public office who are happy to lie. They just lie. That's how it all functions. Everything's lies. That's how fake. And then when you get caught out and you've lied too much, you'll just step down and someone else will come in and continue the lie.
Jan, I can reassure you, I've got a running joke with Jan for the last few years, whether it's pre-recorded or live. I can tell you that we're live, Jan. So this is a live show. We've got a pulse. We are alive. So Nick, what was your reaction initially to Shane Patton resigning? Do you think there's brighter days ahead for Victoria? Will it make a difference in the greater scheme of things?
I hope so. I mean, I don't know what's happening in the background, but it looks really good. It was actually one of the articles was sent to me. Actually, two of them were sent to me by a mate of mine who's a ex-copper. He actually left the police force during the COVID, and he started protesting with us. And he's a ripper bloke. But he actually sent me the articles, two articles about that, and it does look very bright because. You know, it looks like we've got some of the corruption, you know, even if they're just stepping down. Like a lot of the time, I think they step down because they're obviously under a bit of pressure, and people like that should be under a lot of pressure because they've hurt a lot of people, and they've, I think they're criminals. That's my opinion. I'm allowed to, I think anyone that uses their influence and their power. Because they have elevated power over the average Joe, right? They've got the command of the whole police force. It's actually my mate. He was one of the. I'll tell you something about Shane Patton. So my mate was one of the police who investigated the red shirts rot, which is basically the Labor staffers falsifying, I think, timesheets, and they were ripping off the state taxpayer money. And they're just lying. They were writing up false timesheets to get extra money. And it was hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
So my mate said we had all of the evidence, all of it. It was all there. He's actually shared, or somebody shared, I won't say he shared, but he's actually shared the statement that was made to IBAC about this, because he made a complaint to IBAC. Somehow somebody got that out. And I won't say it was him, but somebody did. And in this statement, he basically says, and I've got to, don't quote me on this, but I'll be able to find it and send it to you, because it's in the public domain because someone shared it. But basically, they had all of the evidence to prosecute these people, and I believe there was even one or a number of politicians as well, and Police Command quashed the investigation, and the people in Police Command that quashed the investigation all were very quickly bumped up the ranks. And guess who one of those police officers was in Police Command? Shane Patton.
Shane Patton? Yep. What a surprise. I'm shocked.
Yep. So these people are rotten, mate. They're rotten to the core. It looks like it could be, it's either the snake shedding its skin, or it's something, it's positive, and the people, because I mean, if the police force is filled with people that have good values and good principles and have morals, then they have the power to actually, you think about it, if you're the, you and a few other blokes are the ones that hold the decision-making power for the police, and you're the authority for the police. And then you've got thousands of police officers that you're in charge of, and you're the head of. And they all say, we're not doing it. We're not doing that. Well, you don't have any power. It doesn't matter what it says on paper. But I'm the boss. I'm Shane Patton, and I'm telling you to do X, Y, and Z. And all the people said, we're not doing it. That's it. And there's power in that. And that could be the case. It could be an element of that happening from within. And a lot of people just hate the guy and think he's just rotten. And I mean, we only see what we see on the screen and what we hear from people who maybe potentially have had interactions with him. Outside of that, we don't really know. So it's really hearsay.
A lot of good cops left, unfortunately. Most notable, of course, is Crystal Mitchell. But what hope is there? Even before Dan Andrews became premier, there was a massive cover-up. They were covering up for him. He was drink drive. Well, allegedly, they say that Kath was behind the wheel, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he was behind the wheel. They didn't do a breathalyzer test, ran over a 15-year-old kid, ruined his life, and there was a massive cover-up. And the guy wasn't even premier yet. He wasn't in government. He was the opposition leader. So if he wasn't even in power, what hope do you have once he's in government? It just sounds like the whole system is just rigged from the outset.
And I'll find something for you, actually. Give me a second. I want to show you something. Actually, I think I've got it in my... I sent it to a friend of mine. She's a member of parliament, and she's a good mate of mine. I won't say her name, but I'll send her this. Give me a moment. So you know how Daniel Andrews was going over to make deals with China?
Yes, he was going on secret trips with no journalists.
Well, let me show you something. So this is High Court of Australia. Okay, High Court of Australia, Barwick, CJ, McTiernan, Gibbs, Stephen Mason.
You want to share it?
I've just got it on my phone here, but it's
okay.
It's New South Wales versus the Commonwealth, and it was in 1975. High Court case, December 17th of December 1975. Decisions. The following judgments were written. Okay, listen to this. It's in. So the case that I just quoted, which was New South Wales versus the Commonwealth. It's in point 36. The states have no international personality, no capacity to negotiate or enter into treaties, no power to send representatives or exchange representatives to other international persons, and no right to deal with other countries through agents or otherwise. Their claims to international personality or to sovereignty are groundless. Right, so the High Court has said the states can't send representatives to make deals.
That's why we have a federal government and a foreign minister and a trade minister.
Now it gets better. So this is the Australia Act. So a lot of people say, yeah, but when the Australia Act came in 1986, a lot of things changed, right? But it says in the Australia Act, it says section 2, subsection 2, it says, legislative powers of parliaments of the states. It is hereby further declared and enacted that the legislative powers of the parliament of each state include all legislative powers of the parliament of the United Kingdom might have exercised before commencement of this act for the peace, order and good governance of the state, but nothing in this subsection confers on a state any capacity that the state did not have immediately before the commencement of this act to engage in relations with countries outside of Australia. So the Australia Act doesn't give them powers to do that. And then if you look at even the Constitution, the Quick and Garran, you've got page 633, and it literally tells you that only sovereign nations can deal with other sovereign nations. The state of Victoria is not a sovereign nation and fails to be able to have the power to deal or do business with another foreign nation, another sovereign nation. So they're just criminals.
He's a law unto himself. He was a law unto himself when he was premier.
Yeah, and this is the stuff people need to realize. They're completely out of jurisdiction. They're just doing whatever they want at your expense. You're paying for it.
Scott Morrison had the power to stop him. Scott Morrison, ScoMo had the power to stop him.
Well, I think it's all a big cartel, but I don't know. Of course they do, but nothing's changed in any of the states. You've got $149 billion of our natural gas being given away for basically nothing by our politicians to foreign companies. And then those politicians go and work for those foreign companies once they finish their political tenure. Yeah. So when you look at it from that perspective, I think if you were to get into politics and be a career politician, the only reason you'd probably really be attracted to it as a career politician would be to make huge amounts of money. And the way to make huge amounts of money, it's not a fun job.
No.
You know, it's a very, very boring job. I don't know who would want to do that. Like, why would you want to do that? What's cool about being in Parliament? Nothing really. But there are very moral people that see what's happening in the world and they want to change, or they want to stop the evil from continuing. But then you've also got the people that go, hey, I can make a huge amount of money by making deals with these big companies that have squillions of dollars, because I could, as a politician, I could be the gatekeeper to whatever it is that they want to get access to. You become one of the gatekeepers. You know, imagine there's legislation that's going to benefit a particular company, right? A big multinational company, and that legislation is vital for them to make it to make X amount of money. Well, then you're going to get a cut if you're on their team. You're playing.
It's a nice gravy train.
Yeah, it is, and you can see the amount of wealth these politicians accrue, and it's not by either they're just brilliant at investment, or they've inherited a huge amount of money. But I don't
Elbow comes to mind. He's got a massive investment property portfolio. Has a nice house on the coast, even though there's global warming. Apparently, there's going to be a flood. Yeah,
that's right. Malcolm Turnbull. Well, he was the one that brought in the no jab, no play, no jab, no pay policies and legislation.
Malcolm Turncoat.
And he and his wife own huge amounts of shares in vaccines.
Surprise,
so
surprise.
They directly profited from those policies. You know,
wow, what a surprise.
It's just rotten. And you can talk about this for hours, you know, and just cite another case. I mean, look at Daniel Andrews' portfolio now. There's no way he could have accrued that kind of wealth from working as a politician. Not even.
He's never had a real job in his life.
Never had a real job. And you know what? There's something about working a real job that's very good for the soul, and it builds resilience and toughness, and it creates something good within you to understand what it is to do hard work. Like, you get on the end of a shovel and you work. Like, I work with my hands. I work, I'm on the tools every day, and there's something good about it. Even though it's hard work, you know that it just seems right. Sitting inside of what they call a chamber and just arguing over rubbish and creating controversy for nothing. I have total respect for those politicians that are there for the right reason, which obviously they're not the majority. But all the rest of them, they don't have a good bone in their body. Now, I'll ask you, Leon, what sort of jobs have you done in the past? What sort of work have you done?
Well, me personally, I've worked. Unfortunately, I've never worked on the tools. I've worked in office jobs, white collar office jobs. So not on the tools.
Yeah, but
unfortunately, I would have liked to have, if I could turn back time.
But the point is, you've worked a job where you actually have to work, right? As opposed to being, one of these politicians that's in the club that just. They don't have to work to make
arguing.
Money. I mean, I reckon it would almost be, let's say there was a big company, a big natural gas company that wants to get access to billions of dollars worth of our natural gas. And they want to get specific legislation to be able to enable them to be able to get access to those resources. Let's just say, this is all a hypothetical. I would think if these multi-billion-dollar companies they would literally have a bunch of lawyers write up everything, and just all you got to do is give it to the gatekeeping politicians. Here, we've done all the work for you. All you've got to do is argue this, and we'll sweeten the deal with a bit of money here and there.
A house here, a house there.
Yeah.
Offshore bank account so no one can trace it.
And if you're not completely honest and honorable within yourself, you would fall prey and victim to it. You think, what everyone else was getting these houses, the nice cars, I wouldn't mind that. And that's the problem, because people just aren't that good. We have the capacity to be, but in this world, the temptations and all the destructive stuff is it's a much easier way to go about life, but it's soul destroying, because once you go that way, if you don't repent and you don't turn back, you've lost your integrity. And what are you without integrity? That's your manhood right there. The integrity is really your ability to endure all the struggle and all the stresses of the outside world, just like a building's integrity, the structure. If it's got good integrity, a building, the storm comes and the building's still standing. What you become when you become a sellout is you lose that integrity, and then you're just weak, because if you understand the core of who you are is where your integrity is and where it starts from. It starts from the core, just like you build the foundation of something. And if your foundation, which is your core, which is your heart, that's what the heart means. Even in the like the Latin, it's the word cure or core. It's the word for center, or the center of you. It's where your will is, the things you want, and that wanting inside of you. If you want the things of this world, like all the fancy stuff, more than you want to have integrity and honor and virtue, well, you're weak, and you're nothing special. But the people who would put off all of that temptation in this world to have the things that are honorable and are willing to sacrifice, all of those physical things for that inner stuff, they're the people that are special, and they're the people that we need to make the changes and to get things done to make this world a better place. And the unfortunate thing is, most of those people are not in the political realm, and they're not in positions of power yet. But we're seeing a lot has changed since Trump's got in. The narrative's changing around the world, especially in the West. And I'm very positive about it. I think we've got a lot to look forward to.
That's a nice segue into Trump. Before we go any further, I encourage everyone, if you haven't, sign up to Clo.social, a new social platform set up and created by the brilliant Michael Gray Griffith. Go join that now if you haven't. And we're currently also streaming on that platform. So, Nick, you mentioned Donald Trump. It's 1 month exactly to the day since he was sworn in. Give us a bit of a report card. What do you think so far?
He seems to be doing all the things that he setting up a team that's going to basically, it's the dream team that he's setting up. They've just made it illegal for any medical practitioner to. Well, basically the COVID vaccines are done for everybody. They're just there. It's against the law now. Can't vaccinate anymore with that. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to these documents that they're going to release about JFK and Martin Luther King and whatever else is it. I think that's going to be really exciting. He's releasing political prisoners that have been put in jail. January 6th. It was interesting. Have you heard of Lego Man? He was meant to be one of the. He was a school teacher, and he was meant to. So he was prosecuted and dragged through the courts. He wasn't placed in prison, I don't believe, but he was the evidence when it went to trial. The evidence against him. You know what it was? The key evidence from the prosecution was a Lego, a box of Lego that was of the Capitol building that wasn't even opened. And they're saying because he's got that, he planned the January.
He orchestrated the whole thing.
Orchestrated the whole thing, and that's all the evidence they had. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Wow.
And this guy, he teaches history and all that. That's why he's known as Lego Man, and he would do Legos at school to teach the people, like teach the students about things, right? So that's what we're dealing
How long
with.
did he
That's
get in jail?
Oh, I don't think he went to jail, but he was prosecuted. He was
Wow,
prosecuted.
insane.
Yeah, so it is insane. And then we've got, we've got anti-abortion activists that are in jail. There's all sorts of activists that are in jail. It's just horrendous.
Dr. Simone Gold, she was the head of American Frontline Doctors. She's just like this very, petite, small-looking woman, very intelligent. She's also got a law degree in addition to a doctorate degree. She couldn't hurt a fly. They sent in an entire SWAT team to raid her house, and they smashed and they trashed the house, and she got a year in jail. All she did was just walk through the Capitol building. They opened the doors wide open, and she just walked through with the crowd, and she got swatted like a month after that incident.
Yeah, I think for people like that, I think we need to look at the people that were involved in making the decisions that caused her to be in that position, and we need to take their resources and their assets off them and give them to the other people. Make them liable. You're going to pay the punitive damages as a penalty for what you've done. You've got a nice house. You've got nice properties here. We're going to give those properties to this woman who's gone to jail because of the crimes you've committed. I mean, that's the way to make it, because that hurts people a lot when they lose their stuff, especially people who have made it their life's work to accumulate stuff, because that's all they care about. And if you put them in jail, they're going to be upset, but they're going to be like, I've still got all my stuff there when I get out, right? You take their stuff off them, that's their whole being, their whole identity, the whole person that they are is taken away. They don't know who they are. Because everything they were was based on the status that they projected to the people of the world, based off the vehicle they drove, the house and neighborhood that they live in. So that's, I think, the best way to hurt these people is to take their stuff. And that would be nice to see that happen. And the other one, what's the other one that I was going to say? Elon Musk. He's raised the issue of all the wealth and these extreme portfolios that these politicians have, and doesn't really add up. How did they accumulate so much wealth being politicians? So that would be.
Now he's the head of DOGE, the Department of Efficiency and I don't know, can't remember what that acronym stands for. Something to do with Department of Efficiency or governance or something. Getting rid of bureaucracy.
And they're going to find out where all that money's been coming from, and they're going to let the people know. Let us know, and that's what's beautiful about it. So and the Epstein files. I want to know what's going on there too. We all want to know.
Absolutely. Who was on that island?
Yeah, well, I think the reason that it's hard to get that information is because there'd be so many names and so many suppression orders and the likes. There'll be so many cases where people would, because if a case is going through and their name's attached to something, I think people do have there is provision there to basically have the files redacted or suppressed until the outcome. But executive orders are great for things like that. Just get it out.
Absolutely. A lot of very powerful people on that island. One of which, of course, was Bill Clinton. It's common knowledge he's been on that plane, on that jet at least 26 times on the Lolita Express. That name reveals a lot in itself, unfortunately.
Yep.
So, Nick, tell me. Oh, go on.
No, go on. That's it. I was
closer to home. I want to get to your where you are in terms of political campaigning in a moment. But Clive Palmer just launched his new party, the Trumpets for Patriots, I believe it's called. What are your thoughts on his new venture?
You know what? I really don't know. I've got mixed thoughts about it, just because of I've heard. I don't know the guy. I've heard bits and pieces from different people. I'm running as for the Senate for the Great Australian Party. I've heard what Rod Cullerton had to say, because he was in the process of making a deal Well, not just negotiating a deal with Clive Palmer, and it wasn't a good deal. And obviously, Rod didn't want to, abdicate any of his power and authority over the because that will affect the integrity of the party. So, I don't automatically trust anyone that's a billionaire. I reckon if you're a billionaire, you'd probably be harder to trust somebody. He could be the greatest guy. I don't know. I know Craig Kelly was working with him as well, and I've spent a bit of time with Craig, so I hear different things from people that know him. I don't know the guy though, so I don't know. Who knows?
He seems quite rational. Compared to our political leaders. He's got all the right ideas. That's all I can say. And he speaks really well. And I think, I think his heart is in the right place. I did have the impression, in the last state election when he ran in Victoria, that he wasn't trying to win. I don't know why. But he just gave me that impression. But he certainly has all the right ideas, and I think Australia would be in a better place if he was in power or had influence. But like I said, I don't think he's really.
I totally agree with that because I've heard him speak before, and he talks the talk. He seems to be level-headed, conservative, got those conservative values. 100%. I agree with that. We've got extreme radical left-wing activists in positions of power in academia and media, government, even the police force, right? So I think that would be a positive, but you just don't know. I don't know enough about it to really have much of an opinion.
So this is a nice segue. We've got a question here from Diane. So Diane, Nick is asking, what happened to forming a party with Tricky? So you got some news, you got an update for everyone. So tell us a little bit about that.
So the party is just not going to be registered in time for the election because it takes quite a long time to register a party. I think it's about a minimum of 4 months after you have, I think it's 1,650 members that are signed up, but you have to get about 1.5 to 2 times that to join your party first. Then you've got to go reconcile all of those people to make sure, because if they're not all act like the names have to match, otherwise they get flagged. And if you go to register and you don't have that 1,650, the AEC will go through it and they'll flag it, and then you have to start the whole process again. And the process takes a minimum of 4 months. So that's the reason why we haven't continued. Well, we're not done with the party. It's just not going to be for this election. So Tricky and I have, we're both working with a top bloke named Rod Cullerton. He's got the Great Australian Party. I was a candidate in a state election. I think it was the last state election. Anyway, I was a candidate in the past, so I'm being a candidate again, this time for the federal Senate. I think we're in a good position, especially in Victoria, because we don't have many of the other parties running. Like the Freedom Party, they're going to be focusing on the state election, which makes sense. So and I think it makes sense to have, if we all run at the federal and we all run at the state, we can be dividing up each other's votes, right?
That's right, diluting the vote.
Unless you're able to get new people involved and engaged. And if you can do that, then it's okay. But still, I think we need to have a few people we pick as the guys. The problem is other people think they're the ones that are going to be able to do the best job in politics. I don't think I'm going to be able to be an amazing politician, but I'm not going in there to be a politician. I'm going in there I'm basically going in there to have a fight. We want to clean up the mess. Obviously, I'm not talking about
drain the swamp.
Yeah. I mean, think about this, right? When have you ever heard a senator, when let's say some really, really destructive legislation has passed, and this, have you ever heard a senator say, you know, this legislation here, just ignore it, don't follow it, it's inconsistent with these other laws? Might be the Competition and Consumer Act, it might be the, it might be it might be the Constitution. It's completely invalid, and the case law doesn't allow this legislation to exist. So and basically you invite everybody who doesn't want to have to enforce that law. So the people that are in public office that would have to enforce it, please, you tell them, if you don't want to, reach out to us and we will help you. And then you can take it through the courts and potentially expedite that, because they're always writing legislation that's completely invalid. Whenever there's legislation that's created that's really bad, I promise you it's at least almost always is not valid. It's made outside of its power. It's made beyond its power. I'll give you an example. Remember those directions that they came up with, right? And they restricted our ability to travel, and the police were saying you can't travel between state borders.
How can I forget?
There's no provision in law anywhere to restrict anyone from traveling through the state borders. They're not borders of anything other than a jurisdictional border. That's all they are. Now, we've got this thing called the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act, right? Now, if you look at that act, it literally says that you have to run a declaration in Parliament to suspend any part of that act. And without doing that, the act is still in force and valid, right? Now, was Parliament closed when they imposed those directions? It was. And given that Parliament was closed, they never did a declaration to restrict our right to travel, our right to engage in commerce, our right to all of these, all of these human rights. They didn't. They literally did not restrict any of them in law. They just said they did, and so that's the sort of stuff that we need people in the Senate to raise the alarm bells and say, these guys are making more legislation. It's invalid. Our researchers have looked at it. I've got some really good people that are in my immediate network who are really good legal researchers, and I've got legal counsel who's working with me as well at the moment. And like we could look through these acts and find all the invalidity in there and just prove that it's invalid based off. And now I'm talking about the legislation that's the really destructive stuff. Like when they want to restrict your ability to speak, or they want to restrict your ability to move, or to run businesses, or to be able to keep vehicles on your property. So that's the sort of stuff that I would like to do. And I'd like to do it with a smile on my face, because I don't care about politics. I care about just doing what's right. I don't want to be a politician. I don't want to be wearing a suit all the time. And I'm not afraid to work a real job like most of these politicians are. I'm happy to work a real job. I don't mind it. Like I've worked all sorts of jobs I was a professional fighter before. I built up a business. I built up a gym with no members. You try starting a gym with no members, it's not easy. And so, and that's without a lot of resources, right? So I'm happy to get my hands dirty and work hard. And I want to apply that same sort of tenacity and that work ethic into the destruction of those false narratives that these corrupt and vile parasite politicians are trying to create and establish for the sole purpose of stealing your commonwealth, right, which actually belongs to you, giving it to their friends in these overseas multi-global companies, and then they go and work for those companies. I want to do everything I can to have a good fight with them and break down the false narratives. So that's the only reason that I'm running. So if you want a loud voice in there, that's a voice from the of the common man. I'm not an academic. I'm just a normal guy who likes to get things done, and I can't be bought. It doesn't matter how much they offer me. It's just That's not one. Then I actually would, if I did become a senator and I got in, I would only want to do one term, just go all out,
6
because
years.
because I reckon it would be really hard work to be 100%. Because if you look at it like, I've got 6 years to do maximum damage to these bastards and these liars, and just to go all out, I think you could commit to 6 years, and I reckon you'd be pretty burnt out by the end of it. If you want to have a long-term career in politics, you wouldn't be looking at it from that perspective. You'd be taking the nice, easy route, make the most money, do the least work. I want to go the other way, because we only live on this earth for a short time, and we need to let our light shine. And that's the whole purpose of us existing. It's to be a bright light to the people in the world, and that's how you inspire them to be better. That's how you inspire them to have courage and confidence to do what's right. And we all have a conscience. Well, we don't all have a conscience. We're all born with a conscience.
Right.
We're all born with one. We don't all have, I think in the political world, probably a lot of people don't have a conscience.
It's lacking. Yeah.
Yeah. But we are all born with a conscience. So most people do have at least some measure of their conscience left. So we need to invoke that spirit, and that we need to we need to resonate with those people and inspire them to become more active at actually changing things. I call it resistance. Think of it like in electrical terms. You've got resistors, and think of the corrupt, evil government's mandates and their legislation that's completely deplorable, and all the power they have as being like the source of the electrical current, right? That's the source of the current. What are we meant to do as good moral people? We resist it. And if lots of us are resisting it in different places, what happens to that power and that current? Well, it loses its power. Okay, the watts go down, the voltage goes down. You understand? So that's how we do it. And I've had people say to me before, Nick, what can you do? You can't do anything. You just got to get on with your life. And I say to them, you do anything you can. Anything is something.
I get that all the time from people saying that to me.
As soon as you do nothing, you're no longer a resistor. You've abdicated from it. Now it's like you're in a fight, a war, and you go, oh, you can't win. All right, well, my brothers are all fighting there, and I'm just gonna sit this one out. It's like, do anything. Just do anything. Anything you do that's proactive is actually going to at least take some of their power away. And if we can look at it like that collectively, we can actually take a lot of power from these people, and then I think the current will start to shift.
Yeah. That's a standard talking point that I get. What can you do? What you're doing now, makes no difference. You're wasting your time, and just a standard talking point. What you said is quite powerful. But Nick, I know that you're a man of God. We all know who you are. We know what you stand for. For those not overly familiar, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of Rod Carlton, but just in case, for those not overly familiar with his party, what does the party stand for? Is it more libertarian in nature? Is it more conservative? Give us a bit of a description there.
It's about Australian values and Australia for Australia, going back to the original Commonwealth that we had. The Commonwealth that was literally a biblical principle. It's in the book of Ephesians. It talks about being being part of the Commonwealth of Israel. So that's the whole idea of the Great Australian Party. From my perspective, it's going back to the original Commonwealth, which really they've sort of abdicated that Commonwealth, and they've created this new replacement. And actually, Trump's talking about it in Congress. They're talking about the same thing over there, about how the government's been corporatized. There's a lot of talk in Congress at the moment from specific Congress people. There's one particular lady, I can't remember her name, she was talking about it in detail, but basically they've done the same thing here, where they've created a corporation out of something that's not a corporation, and that's how they're selling away our natural all of our resources that really belong to us. So we should not be paying income taxes. We should not be paying house taxes. We have the resources to pay for everything and to build up businesses and industry. We can do all of it, but the reason we're unable to is because we've got these corrupt parasites who are working for foreign corporations, and they're just stealing everything for us. They're thieves, they're robbers, and they need to be put in prison. So so that's what we stand for. That's what I believe is probably the most pressing matter, is getting our Commonwealth back. I know there's overseas issues, and a lot of people are focused on the Israel issue. I just think we focus here. We've got issues here. Let's fix the problems we've got here. What can we do for, how much impact can we really have in overseas politics, right? We have issues here. We've got a
homeless crisis.
Yep, homelessness. We've got a cost of living crisis. We're bringing huge numbers of people from overseas into this country, and we're destroying the middle class and the small business owner. As a result, we're taxing them to death. Most people really can't. I know a lot of people that have had to close their businesses down because they can't pay the taxes. It's just too hard for them. Everything's just too hard. And I know it's too hard because I was doing it as well. I remember when I first started my gym, the tax rates were very different, and there was an entrepreneurial tax that we had. I think it was Gillard that actually scrapped it. And when that happened, everything became much harder for people that had businesses sort of in my echelon of society. So, we just need to get our first of all, we need to clean up the rot, get rid of it. We need to educate people about our actual Commonwealth, and we need our government to be operating according to the actual law, according to the Constitution, and stop passing legislation that's so basically, if you understand that we have a constitution that limits the power of the government, there's limitations on it, and they're always making legislation that's outside of those limitations. That's one thing that if we can get that idea across to not to the politicians, because I think we have to clean up the political landscape, but I think the general public, if they were to know this and they were aware of it, I mean, it's not by chance that we don't learn about the Constitution and the limitations of the powers of government in schools anymore. They removed that a long time ago, and that's their investment. They're investing in our ignorance. So we just need to teach people again. So there needs to be a big part of what Rod's doing is educating people about what our Commonwealth is and how beautiful it is. And imagine this. Imagine living in a country where you didn't have to pay income tax, because we didn't need to take money off the hardworking battlers, because we actually have all the resources to pay for all of those things. Doesn't mean that taxes are not valid. I mean, the big companies can pay taxes. You can pay taxes on fuel excise. There can be other taxes on different things. There's loads of taxes. Yeah. But the average Joe is being taxed into oblivion. It almost I would say it destroys the incentive for most people to go out and work hard. And I don't know about you, but I look at the younger generation coming through, and I don't see a very strong work ethic in them. And I don't blame them, because then imagine you're an 18, 19, 20-year-old guy, and you see the cost of houses, you see the wages, you see how much tax you've got to pay, how much everything is, fuel, how much fuel costs, how much food costs, how much power costs. It's impossible. I'm never going to be able to own a house. I'm never going to be able to afford to have a family. This is what they've done. And the only reason this has happened is because we've got parasites in government who are giving away all of our wealth to foreign companies that they then go and work for. So we need to clean that up. So that's what we're about.
Now, my understanding is Rod is based in WA, so he's going to be the lead Senate candidate for WA. You're going to be the lead Senate candidate in Victoria. I'm assuming Tricky's going to be the lead Senate candidate for Queensland.
Yep, and we've also got Alex Farrugia running in Victoria as well.
Oh, and excellent! That's
Alex,
a familiar name. Well, that's a familiar name. Small world.
One of the funniest guys that I know. So he'll be good fun to work with.
So you'll be both running for the Senate.
Yeah.
Awesome. Terrific. Nick, is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience tonight in closing?
No, not as yet. I mean, the campaign's just getting going, so I'll probably need to come on here again. Maybe a couple of times.
Absolutely. We always love to have you here.
No, I appreciate that, mate, and thanks for giving me the airtime.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining, everyone. Nick, it was lovely to have you back on. The door's always open. Please come back on anytime. You're much loved. A lot of comments here supporting you. Everyone, I'm sure, will be voting for you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. And God bless and have a good evening.
But wait, can you hear our children crying? They're calling from all